Hello, welcome to the StarCityGames.com Season 1 Invitational in Roanoke, part of the SCG Tour, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside Metagame Guru's own Ben Friedman. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on, Nick? Good to see you.
Good to see you. You always have a good track record at these invitationals.
It's
handful
true.
Of top 8s right behind Jerry at 4. He's got 7, so there's a lot of room to make up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Kai Bude had, 7 Pro Tour wins? No one's ever going to catch him. Jerry's kind of, the GOAT of these Magic tournaments, but I like to think I can hold my own.
Right? Second place at the last one we had, so you have one spot to improve on, and you came in with some very unique decks.
Yeah, I wanted to improve on my finish from the last tournament, and I thought, well, that deck got banned, and that was kind of the old, and I thought, well, I don't really know how I'm going to win in Standard. I think I need something fresh, a new perspective, should we say. So that's exactly what happened. I'm playing a little new P.
Ding, 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 ding. We've arrived at new perspectives, a combo that we saw pop up right before the Pro Tour, and a few people brought it to the Pro Tour. Unfortunately, Aetherworks Marvel was legal in that format and just kind of made a joke of this deck.
Yeah, so I actually lost to former world champion Makihito Mihara playing this deck, and I was playing Aetherworks Marvel at that tournament, and obviously very polite Mr. Mihara is very carefully counting all his mana and proceeding to nut draw me or whatever. I'm like, wow, this deck is a lot of fun, and very courteous. We were in the 1 and 4 bracket or whatever, so we weren't really live for anything. But I thought, well, I don't think that this deck really has what it takes to compete when Marvel is in the format, because Marvel just does what this does better. Mm-hmm. But now that Marvel's gone, people have kind of thought, oh, we can reduce our stack-based interaction, we can reduce our discard. Both of those things are very good for a single-minded New Perspectives combo deck.
Yeah. So you're coming with this deck, and the field is kind of wide open right now, but as you mentioned, people are going away from all the hate cards that could hurt this deck that were meant for Marvel.
Correct.
So now we're dealing with all these go wide teamer decks and these monument decks.
Zombies.
And if they're bringing that to the table, New Perspectives looks pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's really nice when ever my opponent just goes, Thraben Inspector or Crypt Breaker or something along those lines, because I know that we're basically goldfishing. And kind of like ad nauseum in Modern, you goldfish fairly well. You kind of always do the same thing, and it's kind of like, 60% of the time it works every time. I won't make that reference again, but you know what I'm talking about. Acceptable. Okay, so let's, I guess, get into the guts of how it operates, right?
That's the question here, because we see all these random cards strewn around the table.
Draft chaff, like good card in draft, medium card in draft.
So we'll talk about all of these cards. I don't even want to touch on their playability in Limited. That's for you to know. But we've got New Perspectives surrounded by all these cards. We're going to go over them. Vizier of Tumbling Sands, Sheffet Monitor, Weirding Wood, and then of course,
Shadow of the Grave.
Shadow of the Grave combos with Rise of the Second Sons. All these cards, well, how does this work?
Okay, so here's the deal. Basically, the deck wants to play, 2-3 lands. Ideally, on turn 3, you cast one of your land enchantments. That's going to be your Weirding Woods, or I have one Gift of Paradise as a 5th Weirding Wood, just because it's so key to allow you to go off when you play that. That acceleration lets you jump up a turn, and you are able to actually play your turn 5 New Perspectives and then proceed to combo off. So ideally, you're going like a Weirding Wood on turn 3 or turn 4. You can break your Clue. If you play it on turn 4, then you get the extra mana to break the Clue. And then on turn 5, we're going off. We cast our New Perspectives. Let's say our opponent did nothing. Great.
Or they tap out for Gideon.
Yeah, tremendous. Okay, great. So the New Perspectives come into play. We draw 3 cards. Let's say now we have 7 or 8 cards in hand. We start cycling. We're going to start churning through our Sweltering Suns, Haze of Pollen, Censor, all that stuff.
All the cycling lands from
Amonkhet. The cycling lands, yeah, Fetid Pools, Sheltered Thicket, Canyon Slough, etc. Then we start actually making our deck happen by cycling Sheffet Monitors, which generate you 1 additional mana by finding one of your basic lands untapped, and Vizier of Tumbling Sands, which generate you 1 additional mana if you don't have a Weirding Wood in play, or 2, they become Dark Rituals if you have a Weirding Wood in play.
Right.
And they cycle. So generally, you've landed the New Perspectives, you start cycling, you get, 3 or 4 extra lands in play from your monitors, you get, 2 or 3 extra untaps with Vizier, and now it's time to cast Shadow of the Grave. Shadow of the Grave is kind of like a Yawgmoth's Will here for those of you who were playing in 1999, and it just brings them all back. and then we're just going to start over again, cycle, 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 untap. You can generally, so a Shadow of the Grave with 3 or 4 Vizier of Tumbling Sands equals +4 or +6 mana even, and you cast that 2 or 3 times, you draw your entire deck at this point, and you get +14 mana eventually, and then you cast this doozy 2 times, 2 of them. And when the second sun rises, usually you win.
You win the game.
That's right.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Combo!
Right. So it seems simple, but there's a lot going on, and you kind of have to play around some interaction against certain decks, but when you're doing this, there's a lot going on. You have to find right pieces, you have to be adding mana, you have to be keeping track, knowing the in-game of how much mana you have to have. You know, I just watched you win a match against a person who was tapped out with nothing they could do, but it still took a good 5 or so minutes for you to like find everything and assemble the lines. What are the lines that kind of you have to know to identify, and what are the things you could mess up while you're doing this?
Right, okay, so the things that you can mess up are drawing too many cards, just getting excited. You know, you have all these cycling lands and you just start cycling and you just draw a lot of cards, and then you cast Shadow of the Grave and you just keep doing it, right? But you do that and then you accidentally, you look and you say, all right, there are only 8 cards left in my deck. I don't have that many draws to get my Approach of the Second Suns, because every Dark Ritual of the Vizier of Tumbling Sands costs you a draw. Now that's not usually a cost in Magic,
right,
but it unfortunately costs you a card that you have to draw. So you have to monitor that, and speaking of monitor, you want to monitor your basic land count because of Shefet Monitor, because, see, I got all the angles. With Shefet Monitor, you can only +1 on mana if you have a spare basic land left in your deck. Considering that you're cycling pretty hard, your hand's going to eventually become flush with excess basic lands. So, you know, it's a balance of, well, the basic lands come in untapped, the basic lands work with Shefet Monitor, the cycling lands actually churn through your deck. You have to really balance those out and, you know, make sure, well, sequencing my lands correctly in the early game to make sure that I have the right number of lands out, enough mana to cast the new perspectives, but I don't play out too many basic lands, or I don't cycle too hard into basic lands, thus rendering my Shefet Monitors null and void, essentially.
Right. So you need to make sure you're using the monitors early in the chain so you get the lands out of them.
Yeah.
And then from there, you should be able to produce enough mana to make the combo work.
Correct. Once you start, you get some Shefet Monitor lands out, you've thinned your deck out of basics, you're very rich, very high density of Vizier of Tumbling Sands, you can generally get everything together. You also, incidentally, have Traverse the Ulvenwald, which is really nice at finding you Vizier of Tumbling Sands while you're comboing off, because you usually want to get all 4 in your hand so that your Shadow of the Graves become +6 mana rather than just a +2 or +4 mana. Do not burn all of your Shadow of the Graves as +2 or +4 mana, or you won't be able to cast Approach twice to win.
All right.
Incidentally, in my version, I actually cut a Shadow of the Grave, mainly because it's not good until you're already comboing off. Getting 2 in your opening hand is pretty bad, but if you're really, really meticulous with your mana, you can always win with only 3 Shadow of the Graves in your deck.
All right. So what did you get to put in the deck instead of the 4th one of those to kind of...
So I've been tweaking the numbers a lot on this deck, playing a lot of Magic Online recently, and we ended up with 3 copies of Anticipate, kind of as good dig spells that help you find the key card to actually win the game.
Right, because this combo deck has to have new perspectives or doesn't do anything.
Correct. You can't really win without new perspectives, so you need to anticipate for it. But Anticipate doesn't do anything with new perspectives. It's kind of a non-bow, but it's a necessary evil.
Sure.
The question is, would I rather have Anticipate or Hieroglyphic Illumination? One is 2 mana and digs 3 deep. One cycles and can get you plus cards on 4 mana. It's hard to say, but I went with Anticipate mainly because I thought cheaper, you know, a way to actually dig and find the new perspectives is more important, but obviously cycling for a single blue mana is also good.
Right.
That is something that's flexible. You can work with that, but basically we've managed to fit in a 5th Weirding Wood with the 1 Gift of Paradise, a couple copies of Anticipate to help improve consistency, and yeah, so it works, you know,
right.
60% of the time it works every time.
As long as you have new perspectives, you usually get to do your thing.
Yeah.
Because this deck is so dense in cyclers. You have all the lands, you have all the spells that are situational, even when you have to cast Haze of Pollen as a fog sometimes.
Dude, Haze of Pollen as a fog gets respect. It's just like how in Modern, with Ad Nauseam combo, frequently you cast an Angel's Grace as a fog to buy yourself a turn to then cast a couple of dig spells to find the Ad Nauseam. Sweltering Sun similarly, it cycles, but against zombies, there are a lot of times where I don't have a new perspectives, but I Sweltering Suns, it buys me 2 or 3 turns to start anticipating to find the new perspectives.
So that's the main deck, and you think this is pretty well situated against a majority of the field except for the blue decks.
Yeah.
And that's where we see your sideboard, basically an entire sideboard dedicated to beating counterspells.
Correct. Yeah, we see basically I don't want my new perspectives to be the only way to win against counter magic, because if they just have a negate, I can't win.
Sure.
And usually they have as many negates as I have new perspectives, or at least negates plus Gear Hulks, disallows, etc. So we're sideboarding into a Drakehaven control deck, kind of. Drakehavens.
You got negates, dispels, and the Drakehavens.
Correct. And you even have Kefnet the Mindful, which is nice because you can tutor for it with Traverse, and it's also nice as a draw engine, and it's also nice as a form of pressure. You actually do want to try and pressure them to get them to do something so that then you can slam the new perspectives, hopefully with like negate, dispel backup. But it's not necessarily, it's not a great plan, but it has definitely won me games. Usually slamming a turn 3 Drakehaven against most control decks will just win on the spot.
So when you were preparing for this tournament, when did you decide we're going new perspectives?
Well, Brad Carpenter and I, our whole team holed up in a hotel nearby in this, this suite, and we were just all practicing. Some were playing paper, I was playing a lot of Magic Online. And repeatedly I would say, this deck sucks, I'm playing new perspectives. And I would just sit there giggling like a little girl online while I was comboing people off. And Brad Carpenter eventually was like, look man, you're gonna play new P, just play new P. And I said, well, I'm gonna play a lot of new P. Hopefully I take a PP on all my opponents, and that's what's going on today.
That's how far we've sunk.
Yeah, a little juvenile.
We were great until that one.
A little juvenile, but this deck is kind of a juvenile deck.
All right, well Ben, you're off to a great start here in the Invitational. You're playing new perspectives. Everyone's going to enjoy it. Thanks for joining me here joining me here on the sideboard. We're going to hope to get you on camera so everyone else can enjoy some new P, as you say. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Roanoke.